guys usually meet virtually or do you meet physically?
We continue to meet virtually, partly because of the fact that some
Sorry, Chair, we
people.
are live.
Oh, okay. I'll answer you.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks a lot. So, good afternoon, everyone. This is a meeting of HRM's Active Transportation Advisory Committee. My name is Hugh Millward, and I will be chairing the meeting. And I'll call them. I'll note the time. The time is 4:32 on the 4th. And first, I'll read the land acknowledgement. The Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaties signed in this territory and recognizes that we are all treaty people. I'll continue now with the roll call. We have several new members, and what I'd like is if you can simply introduce yourself as I go through the roll call, just so we can be sure that your audio is on. So I'll begin with the new representative from the council, Councillor John Young.
Yes, my name is John Young. I'm the councillor for District 14, Upper Hammonds Plains, Lucasville, Upper Millsap, and Millwood.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. As I mentioned, my name is Hugh Millward. I'll be chairing the meeting, and the vice chair is Douglas Wetmore. Douglas? I don't hear you, Douglas. I still don't hear you. Sorry.
How about now?
Oh, that's good. Yeah,
There we
thank
go.
you.
Start
Okay.
around a sentence. Present
All
you.
right. Oh, it's okay. Continuing. Paul Young. Is Paul Young here? No. I know he said. Is he here?
No.
I'm still not seeing. Holly Woodill. Is Holly here? Have you got your audio on, Holly? Okay. Annika Ropel.
Hello, how are we?
Hello, Annika. Elizabeth Pugh.
I'm here. Hello.
Okay. Peter Zimmer. Your sound's off, Peter.
Yeah, now it's on.
That's good.
Summer, representative of the Halifax Cycling Coalition.
Okay, thank you. Milena Casanavicius.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'm here. Welcome, Councillor Young. Just to let
Thank
you know,
you.
I'm completely blind. So, if you're ever showing pictures, please describe. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Milena. Miles McCormick.
Present, Hugh.
Good. Thank you, Miles. And Glenn Babcock.
Hi, I'm Glenn Babcock. I am here representing the Halifax Accessibility Advisory Committee. I am legally blind and I live in the beautiful country east of Dartmouth.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. We also have with us 4 staff members, I believe. David McIsaac is manager of active transportation. David?
Everybody, thank you.
Thank you. And Martin Bryan is an active transportation planner.
Hi, yes, Martin Breen here. I'm here to talk about the Grants Grove Active Transportation Functional Plan once we get to that agenda item.
Okay, thank you, Martin. Nina, or is it Nina Mark, supervisor of AT Planning? No?
Mark's not joining us tonight. David's here instead.
Okay. And Olawumi Odiinka Apantaku is our legislative assistant.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Okay. So, first thing is to approve the minutes that were circulated Were there any errors or omissions to those minutes? Hearing none, I'd like a motion to approve the minutes as circulated.
I can approve that, Hugh. Douglas here.
Douglas, and any seconder?
I
Milena
can
will second.
second. I beat you, Milena.
Okay, Annika.
Oh, Annika seconded. Okay, that's very good. So the motion is that the minutes of August 22nd be approved as circulated. Those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
And any opposed, please say nay and raise your hand. None opposed, so the motion, minutes are approved as circulated. Item 3 on the agenda is approval of the order of business and approval of any additions or deletions. Olawumi, are there any additions or deletions from the clerk's office?
No additions or deletions from the clerk's office.
None? Okay, and members, do you have any items to add to the agenda? Okay, none. So I'll call a motion to approve the agenda as circulated. And again, I'll need a mover and a seconder.
So move.
Thank you, Peter.
I can
Seconder.
second.
Who was that? Sorry.
I can. You.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So I'll call for the question. Those in favor of the motion, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
I,
And any opposed, please say nay and raise your hand. Okay, none opposed. So the motion is approved, and we have approved the order of business as circulated. So business arising out of the minutes, there was none. I'll call for a declaration of conflict of interest. If you have or feel you have a conflict to declare with regard to the agenda, please declare it now. Okay, no conflict of interest. Item 6 is consideration of deferred business, and there is none. Item 7 is correspondence, petitions, and delegations. So, Olawumi, was there any correspondence received from the clerk's office?
No correspondence received from the clerk's office.
Okay, thank you. And petitions, again, Olawumi, were any petitions received by the clerk's office?
No petitions received from the clerk's office.
Okay, thank you. Item 7.3 is presentations from external people, and there are none. Item 8 is information items brought forward, and there are none. So we move on to item 9, which is reports and discussion relating to reports. Item 9.1.1 is a staff report. It's an update on the Graham's Grove Active Transportation Functional Plan, and Martin Bryan will be presenting that. So Martin, over to you.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Like we said, I am Martin Breen. I'm an active transportation planner with David's team, and I've been managing the Graham's Grove Active Transportation Functional Plan project since I started in this role last year. That project has been ongoing for a couple of years now, and we've been going through our second round of public engagement throughout this fall to get some ideas from the public and from stakeholders of their thoughts on our proposed concepts for the active transportation upgrades in that area. And as part of that engagement process, we wanted to come to ATAC and give you all an update as well, show you what we've been proposing, and hear what you think. So to do that, I'm going to be handing it over to Bruce Mans from Upland. They have a presentation to give you guys an update and show you what we're talking about here.
Thanks, Martin. And hi, everyone. My name is Bruce Manns, and like Martin said, I'm a planner at Upland Planning and Design. And yeah, we're really excited to share with you some of the draft concepts for the Grahams Grove Active Transportation Functional Plan. So yeah, I'm joined today by Martin, who's the project manager with HRM, as well as Garrett Donaher from Englobe, who is the lead transportation engineer for the project as well. Garrett, you want to say hi?
Hello, everybody.
All right, so I'm just going to share my screen here. I need system access, I believe, unless someone has the presentation that they can share.
Olawumi, do you have the
Yes,
presentation?
I've been issues with it. I've made you the cost. Can you? Okay, let me share from my end then.
Sorry, I just might be able to do it here. Yeah, if you don't mind, Olumi, it doesn't seem to be working.
Okay, sure. I'll do that from my end.
So while that's being loaded up, I'll just give you an idea of what we're going to be doing here. So I'm just going to provide a brief 50-minute overview of the project, including some of its key objectives and proposed interventions. And then we'll have some time afterwards to ask any questions and get into it after the presentation. So there we go. Thank you.
Oh,
We start from the top.
okay.
Are we after the screen?
I'm seeing a slide 13 here. I need.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay.
Excellent. Can everyone see that okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I see that.
Yes.
Super. Olumi, I'll just give you a note to move on to the next slide when needed to. Maybe you can go to the next one.
Okay.
There we go. Okay. So yeah, this project is really about creating safe, connected, and enjoyable active transportation options in the Grahams Grove and surrounding area. It really focuses on improving pedestrian and cycling infrastructure along key streets in this area and aims to align as much as possible with the Halifax Integrated Mobility Plan and Active Transportation Priorities Plan. Go to the next slide, please. So yeah, in particular, this project focuses on the active transportation improvement in the Grahams Grove, Penhorn Lake, Westphal, and Main Street areas of Dartmouth. And this slide is just showing a map of those areas and some of the key connections that we're going to be focusing on in this presentation. Can you go to the next slide? Thank you. So this is a project timeline slide. The project began in summer 2022 with formative engagement taking place in the following fall of 2022. Draft concepts were then completed earlier this year, followed by another round of community engagement during this past summer and fall, like Martin said earlier. And we're now refining these designs with the goal of finalizing the project in early 2025. Go to the next slide, please. So we've identified several key corridors for improvement, and this slide just has a list of those connections there, and a lot of them focus on main streets in this Grahams Grove area, such as Prince Albert Road, Harris Road, Braemar Drive, Main Street, and several others. If you can go to the next slide, please. So this is a map showing some of these new proposed routes. And these are highlighted in bold. And like I said, those are on Braemar Drive, Prince Albert Road, Harris Road, Main Street, and some other local residential streets. And the idea here again was to connect existing sidewalks, trails, and multi-use pathways in this neighborhood, which are indicated in thinner lines on this map. And so these proposed concepts will create a more integrated active transportation network and address specific challenges in the area. And in the case of this project, Highway 111, which runs right through the study area, was a pretty significant constraint and barrier that needed to be overcome with some of these interventions. So today we're going to take a closer look at 8 of these routes that you're seeing here on the map, just to give you a sense of the proposed planned improvements. And for each of these, I'm going to show a map of the proposed route, followed by a set of cross sections showing a before and after. And again, I'll try and describe these as much as possible for everyone. Go to the next slide. Okay, so we're going to start in the Grahams Grove area by the Braemar Superstore, where currently there are no designated cycling facilities along the section of Prince Albert Road that runs alongside the Braemar Superstore and Harris Road. And so here we're proposing separated multi-use pathways on Prince Albert Road, as well as a local street bikeway that runs along Harris Road where traffic volumes are a little bit lower. And these new routes will create a more safer and a more efficient network by connecting 2 major multi-use pathways on Lake Bannock and the other multi-use pathway along Penhorn Lake. Go to the next slide. Alawumi, if you could make it full screen if possible. I think some people are having a hard time seeing it.
Yeah.
About that, let me get that one again.
Yes, that's good.
That's looking better. Thank you very
Much
much.
better. Yep.
Okay, and then we can go back to where we were at. Keep going. Yes, perfect. Okay, so, oh, sorry, back one. Thank you very much. So here, this slide on the left is showing the cross sections on the left. Prince Albert Road is a pretty typical wider street, and we're proposing narrowing that and adding a multi-use pathway on the west side of that street. And then on Harris Road, again, we're proposing a local street bikeway here. So this would be basically adding traffic calming measures and markings on the road to help improve active transportation use along that street. Can you move to the next slide? Still not seeing it, Lumi. If you can go to the next slide, please. There we go. Oh, back one. Sorry, everyone. Thanks for your patience. No, yes, there we go. Thank you very much. Okay, so moving north of the Braemar Superstore, the existing conditions on the Braemar overpass were extremely challenging for cyclists. Currently, there's only one narrow sidewalk along the west side of Braemar with no protective barriers or routes for cyclists at all. And this section of road was the biggest barrier and the most dangerous spot that we heard during our consultation phases. And so to address this, we're proposing one of 2 options. Option 1 is a new separated bridge structure dedicated for pedestrians and cyclists that would run parallel on the west side of the overpass. If you can go to the next slide, Alawumi, this will show this in a little bit more detail. So this slide is showing the existing conditions on Braemar Overpass. You can see the sidewalk on the left, and then on the right, we have option 1 on the top, which shows a bridge running parallel to that overpass. Option 2 is a new multi-use pathway that's integrated within the existing overpass. And this can be achieved by reducing lane widths and removing a median along the highway, which would of course need additional traffic analysis to make sure that that could be accommodated. But in that case, a protected multi-use pathway would be within the actual overpass structure. So both of these options focus on ensuring a safe and accessible connection over Highway 111. Both have different barriers to implementation, including costs and making sure that traffic can flow as needed. And during the consultation, we really didn't hear much of a preference between either of these two. What was really communicated to us was that one of them did need to happen, and whichever one could happen the soonest was the more preferred option. Moving on to the next area. So now we're looking at the Westfall area. And again, here there are no existing cycling facilities that connect this community, as well as Waverly Drive to the north and Main Street to the south. And here we've got two options that are proposed. One would be a new multi-use pathway above an existing retaining wall on the slip lane by Highway 111. That would give cyclists an opportunity to travel between Lakecrest Drive and Braemar. And then option 2 would be looking at a local street bikeway with traffic calming measures on Maple Drive, Raymond Street, and Plymouth Road, more towards the north. You can go to the next slide, Lumi. This will show the cross sections. The challenge with the slip lane is that there's a large barrier or retaining wall alongside the sidewalk. So the proposal is to put the multi-use pathway above that retaining wall. And then the other option here shows, again, a typical local street bikeway along Raymond Street and Maple Drive. Moving on to the next area. Now we're looking at the Main Street area here and trying to achieve connections between Tacoma Drive and the Westfall neighborhood. And so here we're proposing unidirectional raised cycle tracks to connect across Main Street on Gordon Avenue and Heartland Street. You can go to the next slide. It will show the cross sections. Yep. This will be achieved by narrowing the traffic lanes and adding unidirectional raised cycle tracks on either side of the road. Moving on to the next area, still on Main Street here, but now we're coming back towards Prince Albert Road, which we talked about.
Sorry, can you just go back to the previous slide for a second?
Absolutely. Yeah, and we can definitely go back and talk about all of these afterwards if you have any questions or need any clarification on any of these. Are you good, Annika? Okay. Again, we're just staying on Main Street, but now we're looking at crossing over the Highway 111 and connecting back into the Prince Albert Road multi-use pathway that we talked about in the first area. Again, here there's no cycling infrastructure, and even the existing sidewalk is quite narrow and lacks barriers between the high traffic, high speed Main Street overpass. So here we're proposing two options. One would be a proposed multi-use pathway that would be integrated within the existing overpass structure. Alumi, can you go to the next slide? So this would be achieved. Again, this is showing existing conditions and proposed conditions on the right. The first option is showing how a multi-use pathway can be integrated within the overpass structure, similar to the Braemar overpass. So here we would be narrowing road lanes, to try and squeeze in a multi-use pathway on the east side of the overpass structure. Option 2, again, similar to the Braemar overpass, would be building a separate overpass crossing that would accommodate all active transportation users and would run parallel to the existing overpass structure. Moving on, another overpass that exists in this study area, again, a common theme, trying to connect over Highway 111 and connect neighborhoods again. There's another overpass at the end of Harris Drive near Penhorn Lake. And currently this is a pedway that doesn't accommodate cyclists as well. Currently cyclists have to dismount, carry their bike up a set of stairs and walk through an overpass to get across into Oakwood Avenue and the Tacoma neighborhood on the other side. So our proposed concept here includes developing a new multi-use structure over Highway 111 to accommodate both cyclists and pedestrians. And this can tie the Penhorn Lake multi-use pathway and the Harris Drive local street bikeway in with a new local street bikeway on Oakwood Avenue, which would feature traffic calming measures to encourage safer traffic through this residential area. Moving on. So now we're looking at a map of Lake Bannock and looking at a connection at the end of the Lake Bannock multi-use pathway that runs through to the Micmac Mall and connects in with the Shuby Lake Trail system. And currently right now, there's a section or a gap in this connection where cyclists have to again dismount and walk on a sidewalk to connect into the Shuby Lake systems here. So here our proposal includes two options. If you can go to the next slide, Alumi. One would be either a raised cycle track that could be added beside the sidewalk, but would require a significant retaining wall because there's a big berm along that one side of the road. So the cycle track could be accommodated there. The other option is replacing the sidewalk with a new multi-use pathway along Highway 111. But this would require narrowing the on-ramp slightly to accommodate this. And then the final area that we're looking at here is on Tacoma Drive. And again, this is in the Main Street area. And again, there are currently no cycling infrastructure along Tacoma Drive right now. And here we're proposing two options. One would be a unidirectional raised cycle track on each side of Tacoma Drive. And the other option would be a multi-use pathway along the south side of Tacoma Drive. If you can show the next slide, Alumi, this will show the cross sections of these options. Both options aim to enhance cycling connectivity. However, both would impact on-street parking along Tacoma Drive in the future. Okay, so that concludes our overview of the proposed interventions for the Grahams Grove Functional Plan. We really appreciate your time. And again, we'd be happy to dive deeper into any of these specific improvements or interventions and answer any questions if anyone has any.
Okay, thank you very much, Martin. I do have a speaking list here, and I will call on members to see whether they wish to speak in terms of comments or suggestions. You'll be allowed 5 minutes the first time you speak, and then if we can go around again if there are follow-up questions, and you're allowed 3 minutes on a second round. So I'll call on people in the following order. Firstly, Paul Young. Now, I don't recall if Paul was with us. He's not, is he? Okay, Holly Woodill. Holly, you have questions or comments?
I think Holly's mic isn't working. Holly, if you want, maybe you could put it in the chat. It's possible.
Yeah, I saw the message that Holly's microphone was not working. So yes, if she has something to add to the chat, I don't know if she does. I don't see that right now. So we'll move on. Annika Ropel, do you have any questions or concerns?
I mean, yes, just a couple comments. I'll try and keep it quick and breezy. One, what a ginormous project. I think this is the largest proposal we've seen at this committee before in terms of the scope of what you're trying to deal with. I think from our perspective, I really like the options where the roads are getting narrowed. We're seeing increasingly speeding being a factor, and without photo radar, we know that redesigning our roads to encourage people to drive slower is kind of the only way we're going to get people to slow down at this current point. So I'm big thumbs up on the options where the roads are narrowed, particularly all of the data suggests that if people slow down, there's fewer accidents and then there's less congestion. So it's a big win for everyone. I'm wondering about the overpass from the bottom of Harris Street. I noticed that it's got switchbacks, I assume, to get the bikes up instead of the stairs. Just wanting to make sure that that's going to accommodate different types of bikes, because I know sometimes those switchbacks are really narrow. And so if you have like the longer cargo bikes, or if you have like a tandem, that those turns can be impossible to do. So that's just a note on that. Milena's probably going to comment on this as well, but I think those raised the problem and the conflict between the bike paths that are at the same height as the sidewalk and the indication to anyone with a visual impairment continues to be something that we keep making recommendations on. Specifically on Gordon Ave, I noticed that there was actually a barrier between traffic and the bike lane and then the sidewalk. And so I'm wondering, from a cycling perspective, that barrier there that I hope is going to be a big barrier that is concrete, those giant concrete barriers, would be really awesome to see, instead of having the sidewalk and the bike lane at the same height. So that would be one thing. Yeah. And then finally, I just returned from New York, where on one of the bridges, they just used concrete barriers and chain link fence and took over a full traffic lane across the bridge and turned it into a cycle lane. It felt like a very cheap and very quick thing to implement. And so I'm just throwing that out to this committee, that it was very refreshing to see a city the size of New York actually be progressive at that level in terms of taking lanes back from vehicle traffic to other road users. So, these things are possible. And also there's interim projects while we build bridges. So that question around what's the fastest way that some of those overpasses problems can be fixed, that I would also recommend, if we are going to go with the bridges, which I imagine are going to take longer, that we look into interim solutions. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Annika. Elizabeth Pugh, do you have comments?
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Bruce. Great presentation. I'm not sure if this has come into the department yet for comment. I'm sure we're going to have lots and we'll need quite a bit of time to delve into it. So I just encourage that I don't know whose job it is, if it's Upland or if it's HRM, to send that over. But we've done some work with the Porter's Portland Street crossing, the overpass there. And we've had our bridge engineers delve into, the structural possibilities for adding or not, and making lane configuration changes and stuff into that. So I think that'd be really very helpful to narrow some of these things down. So I just encourage that to come over as soon as it's at a point that it's ready. But that's all. I'm not going to get myself into trouble without looking at this a whole lot deeper than what we have so far. Thanks.
Okay,
If I could, would I be able to just quickly?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. So thanks for that question. We have been in talks with some representatives from Public Works. It's been a while since we met with them, but we've been talking about some of the bridge structures that are involved and trying to make sure that we coordinate, pretty much anything that we're proposing on these provincial assets needs to get approved by by that department. So we're making sure we keep them in the loop. And basically, we're kind of, the plan is to come back once we're finished with the engagement and kind of show them what we've heard and what we're proposing in a bit more detail, because that's what they were looking for last time we talked to them. So we can kind of show how we might make some of these cross sections fit on the existing bridges, or what it would take to build new ones. And yeah. So,
okay,
yes,
great.
we
Yeah,
are,
I know we've seen a couple of these in isolation, but I don't think the whole
Mhm.
big package has come over. So yeah, thanks.
Yep. Thank you.
Very good. Peter Zimmer.
Hi. Interesting presentation, reflecting some of the discussions within the Cycling Coalition. We sort of feel like multi-use pathways are good for areas that have very low cycling walking volumes. And we have to be anticipating that whatever solution we put in next is likely to stick around for a couple of decades before there's any possibility of revision. So we'd say in general, proposals that rely on multi-use pathways are maybe better than nothing, but not very good at all. Frankly, where there is a possibility of a protected bike lane that separates cyclists very clearly from pedestrians, and even more importantly, separates them from the cars and other motor vehicles, those are to be desired. We'd be strongly behind any things in that. I'd echo Anika's comments saying yes, it's good, but doing it fast, finding inexpensive ways that are as close as possible to an optimum solution, to say, yeah, very likely every time you do something, there's going to be adjustments needed. And I guess my concern in all of this is seeing the kinds of use or the kinds of difficulties of having single lane bike paths makes it very hard to pass. If you've got a bidirectional multi-use pathway where you're trying to mix together pedestrians, and some of those pedestrians may have visual difficulties or hearing difficulties, and you have cyclists of different abilities, perhaps some of them being not very well educated, wanting to speed right along, you have problems that need to be considered with such things as maybe a wide enough cycle lane that two cargo bikes could pass each other. So I'll stop. That's enough. I have lots of questions. It's nice that it's this far along. It's got to be better.
Okay. Any response on that one?
Just, definitely appreciate the comments. It's definitely something we always have to try to consider is finding, whether the MUP is the appropriate compromise to make in that situation, right? Where if we only have so much space and we were trying to provide some improvement for pedestrians and for cyclists, it can be kind of a convenient or a good compromise option, but we definitely know that it's not the ideal solution in a lot of cases. So we're definitely trying to keep that in mind, and we want to minimize conflicts and issues with not being able to pass and stuff. We're definitely keeping that in mind, and I appreciate the feedback.
Okay, thank you.
Could I possibly do one brief comment? The Integrated Mobility Plan, which was launched to great international, wow, this is pretty nice, says pedestrians come first, cyclists come second, transportation, bus users come third, and in the priorities, it sounds to me like cars come first, budgets come second, and we've got a few crumbs left over for the pedestrians and a few crumbs left over for the cyclists. And we're not even paying attention to the other users e-scooters, cargo bikes, they're not in the plans as I see them at all. And we're talking about building something that's going to supposedly serve our city for the next couple of decades. You got to do better.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Milena, do you have any comments or questions?
I have a comment, Mr. Chair. All of this is becoming very exhausting. I appreciate the presentation. I also appreciate the fact that this team is working hard in a difficult area. Could you please describe to me the width of the overpasses and exactly how a cyclist, a wheelchair, a pedestrian will be getting up to those overpasses?
Yeah, so I might lean on Garrett for some help with this one because he's been looking at some of the more of those details. Do you have anything to add there?
So one of the things that we've been really conscious of in comparing a new bridge structure option against a reallocation of the space is exactly the issue of user conflict on whatever new facility. And so when we're jamming down the vehicle travel lanes to try to minimize those and squeeze in a multi-use path on the existing bridge structure, that's also squeezed down narrower than we would like. And so on the main structure on Braemar over the 111, we've managed to fit a 4.5 meter wide multi-use path, which is generous for a multi-use path, but it still doesn't separate the users. When we look at the option to reconfigure the Main Street overpass, that's only a little bit wider than 3 meters because that structure is narrower. And so that option is really constrained, a lot narrower than we would like for a multi-use path, especially because it would have concrete barriers on both sides. So not only is it a narrow path, but it's kind of hemmed in on both sides by those vertical barriers. And so that is definitely a part of the trade-offs we're looking at, and the feedback we're looking at from you guys is when we do that evaluation, like how strong of a scoring push should we put those as we're evaluating and coming to a recommendation.
Okay, so let's talk giraffe height. How high are the overpasses, or how high will they be? And I'll get to why I'm asking this.
I don't know that number off the top of my head. I think that the Highway 111 overpass, I think it has over 6 meters of clearance underneath of it. It's pretty high for both of those overpasses, or I guess all 3 of them, because the pedway's that high as well. They're up over 20 feet in the air for sure.
Okay, so number one is I've been on this committee for 4 years, and I'm echoing some of the things that Mr. Zimmerman said, and Annika, and I'm sure my lovely colleague Douglas and everybody else will be saying. What is being built for the cycling community is becoming a huge conflict with pedestrians, particularly those who are blind and partially sighted. Multi-use paths are quite dangerous for all. And I do realize the hard situation that your team is in. How to make it better, I don't know. My concern is with the overpass, cyclists and e-scooters, this pilot project is not working, but they will be on these multi-use paths, no matter which way they're going, are not paying attention. My dog was nearly maimed on a sidewalk by an e-scooter user, no helmet, who fell off the e-scooter coming to a full halt. Now, you're going to have the cyclists, pedestrians, wheelchairs, walkers, strollers, et cetera, et cetera. We're just looking for a dangerous situation to be happening, and people are going to get hurt. So what do? I don't know. What I don't want to hear, which I did hear, was that one of the barriers might be cost. I think I'm quite tired after 4 years of hearing one of the barriers might be cost because people are getting hurt. So if we could consider getting rid of the barriers cost, if you don't have the money now, look for the money and slow the project down a little bit. I know the cycling community wants to be cycling. So do I. I'm on my tandem. You know, it's exciting to be out there. I'll go with what Annika said, narrow as much of the streets for vehicular traffic as possible so we can have that wonderful 4 meters on a multi-use path. End of thought. And I do appreciate all the hard work that the teams are doing. Thank you. I'm done, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Milena. I think many of us would echo what you said. Councillor John Young, you have comments or questions?
I have a few questions, or maybe a couple comments. I'll go with 2 of them, and then maybe I'll come back with the 3-minute thing. One of the questions was, when was the start date of the Grahams Grove Active Transportation Functional Plan? And my second one is, what is the total cost of the functional plan project? We'll deal with those 2.
Okay, so I may defer to David on this because the functional plan itself predates my time with the active transportation team. And also
hi, yeah, John. It's been about, I think we're in like year 3.
Year 3? Okay.
We should also note that like this project did have a bit of kind of you know, a bit of a pause when we had the employee turnover, where, you know, my predecessor left and then I joined the group and had to get up to speed, and so you know, there was a little while where things were kind of getting sorted out and getting moving again.
Okay, that's 1. Number 2.
So for the cost, again, David, I might tag you in here, or maybe Garrett.
Yeah, the budget for the project as it stands right now is $118,000.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Is that okay then, Councillor?
Yeah, those ones there. I have one more to add, is what would be the estimated number of users of this project once it's completed? You could do it on yearly, monthly, weekly, whatever you can get the data. That's it.
Do you want me to take that one?
Yeah,
David
maybe.
here. Yeah, so I mean, short answer is we don't know. The first step is really to kind of do the planning we're doing now, figure out what the preferred options are, look for, you know, integration. And, you know, once we have that and once we get council approval, that's when we start figuring out, you know, when we have the capacity internally to do the design work. And I'm with Milena on budget, but, you know, budget is huge. And one of the things that we will get from Englobe from this project is some, you know, high level, we call them Class D cost estimates. And you know, everything that I'm seeing here is like screaming millions and millions and maybe tens of millions of dollars if we get into some of those overpasses. So, you know, at least a decade, you know, to get even some of this stuff built is probably a reasonable estimate, but we don't know yet.
Okay.
Part of the last stages of the project from our end is to look at a little bit of implementation detail and say what opportunities are out there in infrastructure that's happening now, what's going on with adjacent projects like the Portland Street project that was mentioned earlier, what infrastructure is being life cycled that we could integrate with, where are the best opportunities or the highest desire for need, like Bruce mentioned earlier, the crossing of Highway 111 is really popping up as a high priority for a lot of the public members that we've heard from. And so wrapping that all together and saying, you know, as those details come through that David was mentioning, like as we work toward these projects, what order do we need to bite them off on? What's good in terms of budget? What's good in terms of user priority? And what's good in terms of coordination with other things? So it's kind of a little implementation piece that we put in the last stage of this project to help guide that process as it moves forward.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to Miles McCormick.
Thank you very much for the presentation, and I also appreciate the dialogue that's taken place. One of the things that I've been thinking about is crossing Highway 111, and the thing that keeps weighing on my mind, yeah, there is going to be a high cost, but at the same point in time, the growth that's taking place and continued growth, we need to do this one right, because what we have there isn't right. And we have to think ahead. And if it does cost, yes, I understand fiscal responsibility, but just thinking about the Waverly Road, the growth, the new constructions going on along there, streaming that in and coming from, say, Panhorn Way, just that it's going to be very, very critical. And I think it demonstrates growth. With growth comes expenses. And this is a major one for safety, but not just for mobility, but for safety purposes alone. With the continued growth, never mind the e-scooters and all these other things that we're tossing at the infrastructure, but just for safety purposes and the continued development of housing in this area, we need this. And I appreciate what's happening and look forward to seeing where this goes. Thank you.
Very good, Miles. Thank you. Douglas Wetmore.
Thank you, Hugh. Echoing a lot of what's already been said, I guess to summarize anything else that I would like to say is, fortunately, I don't have a copy of the slide deck open on my second screen here, so I'm trying to remember the road names as best I can. But the segments that were kind of on the suburban streets and not kind of the main arteries, especially those roads that are wider, regardless of what option we go with, I think looking at kind of shrinking down the road length, as Annika was saying, would be a great option. I think there was one example where we were looking at either a multi-use pathway that takes away some road space or a separated lane that goes into the side of the cliff or side of the hill there. Echoing what everyone said, I'd like to see us avoid multi-use pathways where we can, but I mean, we may as well shrinking the road space if we're going to be doing construction there anyway. So those are kind of the main points I wanted to say. The other thing was, I think this was brought up already. There was an option for a couple of elevated bike lanes in the plan. At this point, I think I would prefer to see an option with kind of on-road, taking space away from either parking or existing road length. I know we're pretty early in the design stages, so 1 second, I've got a cat here that's playing with something she should. There we go. Where was I? Yeah, once we get to the point where we're starting to see a few more design concepts, I'd like to see, you know, options A, B, C with a few different ideas, but looking forward to seeing how this plan gets revised.
Okay, thank you, Douglas. Glenn Babcock.
Well, I don't think that I have a lot to add either. I live somewhere where we don't have sidewalks or bike lanes. And I have not been brave enough to try taking my bike into Dartmouth. When it comes to that, I think I would take the cowardly approach. I would want to be on bike lanes that were as separated from cars as possible. Especially being nearsighted, I think when I do ride my bike, I ride slowly and carefully. I think I'm polite as far as pedestrians are concerned, but I don't have any real confidence in drivers going past me, towards me, or anywhere near me. So I'm not as much of an expert as a lot of the people on this call because I don't ride my bike in Dartmouth. I'd be kind of curious to know if the project manager and the engineers on this project actually ride bikes in Dartmouth.
I I can try to answer that. Yes, I do ride my bike in Dartmouth as much as I can. Living in the north end of Halifax, but I do bike to our office in Woodside. And for this project, I've done some trips out to the Grams Grove area and around Lake Quinault, and tried to kind of get the on the ground, what's there, how it feels to bike through there right now. It's definitely not very comfortable. And that's something we heard a lot from, public engagement as well, was a lot of people having really strong desire to be able to go through this area, but feeling like they're kind of like shut out from downtown Dartmouth by this, impossible highway. So, yeah, lots of potential here. And we definitely want to get it right and make it easier for people to make those trips that, there's lots of stuff really close to here.
And again, cost. The only thing about cost, I guess, and I realize this would be more of an order of magnitude question at this point, but I just wonder if there's any idea how much difference in cost there would be with, say, the building of that adjacent bridge over the 111 compared to the just using the existing infrastructure and putting in a multi-use pathway or dedicated bike lane.
Yeah, I might let Garrett get into more detail on it, but I think generally, yeah, the sense is the reallocation would be cheaper than building the new structure. But I'll let Garrett get into more.
Yeah, we're definitely talking millions, maybe low tens of millions for a new structure compared to reallocating the space. It's a big price tag.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Glenn. I do have a few comments myself, if I may. I do cycle in Dartmouth, and in particular, I cycle over Highway 111 using the current 50-year-old lack of facilities. And that's a point to bear in mind, though. Those overpasses and that very small sidewalk on Main Street going across the 111, they are 50 years old. They certainly need replacing anyway. And so the city has a very good case for insisting that the province pay for those overpasses because it's their overpasses. That's one thing. Secondly, the one on Main, the overpass on Main, definitely, rather than trying to squeeze in a multi-use path on the existing structure, there should be a separate structure as is envisaged for Portland Street over the Highway 11 as well. Separate structure which could be actually wide enough to separate pedestrians and cyclists. So that would be certainly appreciated. The current overpass to the Penhorn Lake area is a disgrace, quite frankly, because even people with pushchairs and so forth, there is no ramp. There's no ramp. I mean, that's just criminal, frankly. So that's actually a priority, I think, from my point of view, is to get that, especially since there are new active transport routes in the Penhorn redevelopment that it could connect to. So that's very, I think, a priority item. I don't know if you have any response to those concerns and requests.
Yeah, can get into some of it without wanting to overstep too much, but we've definitely been talking with the province throughout this project and trying to keep them in the loop. And actually that last overpass you mentioned, the Oakwood Harris one, we've had a meeting specifically about that because it's getting to the end of its life and they're trying to start making their plans for what to do with it. We've kind of made sure they know it's a big priority for us to keep a connection there and to try to improve it if we can. And those talks are ongoing. But for that one and for the other overpasses along this corridor, they've been a pretty productive partner in all this, and I think I'm optimistic that we'll be able to work together to figure something out here. Okay,
very good. Okay, I don't know if anyone has any further questions. If you do, could you put your hand up or speak? I
Yeah.
don't see anyone's hand up, do I? No.
Nathan.
All right. Oh, yes, I'm sorry, Nathan Tuck. Okay, yes, Nathan.
Yes, sorry, Nathan Tuck from Cycling Nova Scotia. I think I was missed
Oh.
at the start in the introductions.
Ah, okay. I didn't have your name on the list. I'm very sorry.
I'm not sure how I missed that, but
So you're new to the committee.
yes, filling in for Brittany McLean from Cycling Nova Scotia.
Oh, I see.
Yep.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. So I guess I'd just like to second some of the comments I think Douglas and Annika made just regarding the overpass over 111 to Braemar Drive. The idea of a separate structure sounds sort of, it'd be great. But in terms of trying to reduce that project time from a decade and just getting something in place, I think reclaiming some of that lane space, giving it to cyclists and pedestrians is an achievable option. It would lower the traffic, reduce the space for cars, would result in a safer overpass for everyone. So I think that's a great option, potentially speed things up. And then otherwise, just looking at the connection along the 111 towards the Micmac Mall, coming off Lake Banook Trail, it looks like there's desire lines onto the Brookdale Court. So rather than cutting into the verge next to the highway there, I'm sure that was something that was considered, but it looks like it could be a preferable option based on how it's currently being used. So I'm not sure if that was considered.
We did take a look at that. That kind of corner at the bottom of Brookdale Crescent is a development site and is privately owned for future development. So it kind of cuts us off from that perspective.
Okay. I see Malena has her hand up, and then Annika, and then Peter Zimmer. So, Malena.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just a quick question. No matter which way this goes, two quick questions actually. Having walked Slater Street and some other stakeholder meetings on the spot throughout Dartmouth, at Highway 111, when you're in a car, you can close the window and protect your ears. If we're going to go multi-use path routes, or even if we're not, are there any plans to put in tree lines to protect cyclists and pedestrians? Because it's a very unpleasant, intolerable environment to be actively participating in. Question one.
We don't have anything specific right now to dealing with the sound, but it's definitely something we've heard is kind of making sure that whatever facilities we have here are comfortable for people to use beyond just the safety aspect, but also, whether they're sheltered, whether they have, adequate protection. So it's definitely something we want to keep in mind. I don't know, Garrett might have more of a question about, or a comment on the actual feasibility of how we would do it, but
yeah, for the actual overpass structures themselves, nothing, just there's no soil there to deal with. A couple of different locations we did look at what that vegetative environment would do to the facility. So the connection between Lake Banook and Micmac Boulevard, there's actually that big berm that's there now is a sound attenuation berm for the neighboring residences. And so if we cut into that berm to provide dedicated cycling facilities, then we're creating a hard surface retaining wall that's reflecting sound back against the users. So that's a less comfortable environment, even though it's separated. So it's one of the trade-offs we have to look at. And the connection between Braemar Drive, like coming in from Waverly down around to Main Street, that option, we looked at going both below the retaining wall and above the retaining wall and the trade-offs there. And one of the things that caused us to recommend going above the retaining wall is that separation, putting folks up where the vegetation is, keeping them out of that sound reflection area, So it's something we've thought about, but in a highway environment, there's unfortunately not a lot of opportunities to really address it.
Thank you. And I bring that up because more and more science journals are writing as proof that all of this biking, walking, roller skating, whatever you're doing in these heavily vehicle-induced areas is causing a heck of a lot of nerve damage to people and sending people into hospitals, anxiety, et cetera, et cetera. So we need to consider public health. It's not just about getting from point A to point B, but protecting your ears and protecting your mental sanity, for lack of a better word. Second question, and this is a fun one, which I've only had one person answer within the HRM team. David, I'll put it to you as well, Garrett and Martin. Free costs, no matter what would be your ultimate choice? And we're not going to hold you to it, but you tell me, because I'd like to hear, give me some faith that you believe in these projects and you're not just doing your engineering job. Tell me how you would like to cycle in this area. I'm smiling, Glenn.
Which connection?
Pick anyone. What would be your ultimate? We're living in a. I'm giving you the magic wand. Make this what you want. How?
The crossings over the Highway 111, I would love new structures that were wide enough to provide separated facilities. Just like a nice, generous sidewalk so that you're not squeezed down onto a single sidewalk, wide enough for a few people to walk abreast or to pass each other comfortably. And then similarly, cycling facility beside that for people to pass each other. When that type of structure needs to be, we're talking about more than 6 meters wide, kind of inside the structure. And when you're talking about structures, cost per square meter is a big thing. But if you're going to throw out the cost requirement, then I'm going to say a nice big old wide structure that's dedicated to AT.
I'll
jump in. Anybody else?
Bruce from Glen. I would like to see the same, and I live in the area, and I think it would just. I know Lake Bannock is a really active lake with people running around it, biking around it all the time, and that's right at the gateway of coming up a highway and into the Grahams Grove and Dartmouth area. And what a cool statement to have a separated multi-use pathway that maybe even looks kind of nice with people biking over it and running over it and rolling over it. I think would be pretty cool.
Yeah, the bridge over the channel between Lake Micmac and Lake Bannock is a nicely designed bridge. Echo that, do something cool with the architecture. That would be really awesome.
Yeah, and even I was just gonna say, even getting beyond the bridges, obviously then along the roadways, the dream would be to have the dedicated facilities for each type of road user, so you don't have the mix between pedestrians and bikes, and everyone has their own space and there's lots of room, and everyone's off the street. They're not dealing with cars, lots of trees and lots of sound dampening and the works. I wish we were able to do that.
Yeah. Well, I'm very happy to hear you say that. The only other person who actually answered honestly was Maria Jacobs for the first time ever, and give applause to her, because if you can think that what you would want, then you can think outside the box of what you're all being constricted to be doing. So you give me faith. I'm still smiling. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you, Milena.
I'll let Maria know.
Annika Ropel, you had your hand up.
I did, and now I'm struggling to remember why. Maybe if Peter wants to go, and I'll see if I can remember.
All right, let's go on to Peter then. Peter Zimmer.
Okay. Milena, thank you so much for your wonderful question. One comment to the engineers is, if the bridge does not have to be designed to allow semi-tractor trailers to be driven over them, does not have to have vehicles that weigh a ton or 2 or 3 or 10, you can make a much more delicate, beautiful structure that happens to be quite wide. I mean, you have to have it proof against falling down with snow or wind, but you could do it. It's a different sort of bridge. It's a pedestrian bridge. I think the Danes have some lovely cycleways wandering through Copenhagen. Take a look at those. They're light, they're delicate, they're beautiful. Anyway, you know, that it's a wonderful place. You know, to think of the goodness that we could get and should have got. So I'll stop at this point. Leave it up.
Thank you, Peter.
I remember.
Okay, Annika, go ahead.
Yeah, it was to that point of the roads narrowing, and I think Douglas said this, but I think, and I maybe this is for a subsequent meeting of making a motion to go to the Transportation Standing Committee, that we spend money on these functional or on these plans and on these recommendations, and it is just interesting to look at recommendations to different roads. And when we go with road C instead of road A and B, those plans get thrown out, but those roads will eventually get resurfaced. And so it would be nice, and I know this is probably like a logistical thing, but it would be nice for those to be docketed somewhere of being like, yeah, we decided not to go with this road for traffic calming, but we could narrow it next time it gets resurfaced. Like, it would just be really nice that that is thrown in with repaving, that roads, the widths are lowered down to the minimum instead of the maximum, because apparently that, according to the province, is the only way to slow people down right now. And I'm being very snarky, and I have no problem with that. So yeah, and then I think just that final comment of the expense of this. I think if we don't invest in this area, in this neighborhood, we are forcing people in this neighborhood to drive. We are not giving them any viable opportunities. And so this is an investment in a future and in a much better area. We already all know that these areas are super congested, particularly at rush hour. And the only way to alleviate that is to give people alternatives. So yeah, I think this is worth it. So yeah, that's it.
Okay. Thank you, Annika. I think I'll draw this discussion to a close and thank the presenters. And hopefully we will perhaps see more detailed plans coming forward in later on. Thank you again. So let's move on to 9.1.2 on the agenda, which is an update from David McIsaac on the work of active transportation. David.
Thanks, Hugh. Just give you a few of the highlights, I guess, of what's going on with the Active Transportation Planning Group. So we're right at the very end of the construction season right now. So some of the projects that we spent quite a bit of time on the planning side and then handed off to our colleagues in design are getting close to completion. Sidewalks, that sort of thing. So usually in January, I'll bring a list of what was built in the previous construction season, and I'll do that. Second, we're in close to the end of the procurement process to hire kind of an HRM or a municipal sanctioned shared micromobility service in the city. So we put out an RFP earlier in the fall, looking for a private company to come in and offer both bike share and e-scooter share for a 2-year pilot project. And so that's progressing and is replacing sort of the existing e-scooter system that has been around for a few years. Couple of reports related to AT that should be coming to council early in the winter. We'll have one on the Slater Street and Connections project in Dartmouth, part of the AAA network. And we'll have a big report coming on rural active transportation and specifically the results of our engagement in communities last winter and spring on the area rate that is required to make these communities eligible, at least now. Upcoming engagement. we will be going out to the public probably in January, February on the Midtown AAA project. So this is sort of bikeways in the middle of the peninsula, Bell Road, the Commons, Wellsford, connecting over into the Vernon Local Street Bikeway. And then also we're going to go back out to the public on the Woodside Shearwater connection. So folks may know that you can walk and bike and stuff along the Dartmouth Harbor front, and you can also do it out in Shearwater on the Shearwater Flyer, but there's a 3-kilometer gap in the middle. And we developed some options a couple of years ago, or about a year and a half ago, but we've been doing more work recently on what I think is a better option, or I think, but we'll see what the public thinks, and then we'll be able to kind of have a preferred option to take to the public. I guess one thing I'm kind of spending a bit of time on now is project planning for the Active Transportation Priorities Plan update. So that's going to be a process that will mostly happen in 2025. And I expect this committee to have I'm hoping this committee plays an important role in that. And we'll probably be coming to you with a bit more information on that early in the new year as well. That's my update, and happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you. Maybe if people can raise their hand, and I'll give you in order. I see Peter Young had his hand up first. Oh my goodness, just a minute. John Young, Annika Ropel, and Nathan Tuck. That's what I see right now. Let me just write those down. Annika and Nathan, and okay. So Peter Zimmer, you're first, I believe.
Okay, thank you. Really, it comes out of David's remarks and my increasing annoyance with PDFs that are circulated that don't behave nicely on my printer. I really wonder if all of these planners, when they're submitting a multi-page document, whether it's, I don't know, whatever it was, 20 pages for what we were discussing today, others go up to 40 or 50 pages. I would like them to budget for such a advisory committee as us, printing out enough hard copies to circulate to us in advance. I'm an old-fashioned, not completely at home on the computers, juggling around between one screen with a PDF that doesn't fit and flow where I want it to. I want a paper copy. And you guys in your presentations are not making it easy for me to print out a paper copy. I would like you, since I know you do print some of those suckers, make your print run a little bigger, big enough for the ATAC committee to each get sent a copy of those. And so, David, you've got several things you were mentioning coming as big reports. I'd like them in a concrete form in my hands well before your presentation, so I can scribble notes in the margin and put post-it notes on, so you can have better feedback from me, from other people. So,
okay, thank you, Peter. Let's move on to John Young.
Okay, hi. Do I take my hand? Is my hand down now? Okay. So, David, I heard when you mentioned to council, you said Slater Street connections, Middletown, Woodside, Shearwater connections. You mentioned area rates. I didn't hear Lucasville Greenway Society.
So the report that we bring to council on the rural program and area rates will include Lucasville. That will basically look at the engagement and what we heard from the public and stakeholders from Lucasville, Porters Lake, Musquodoboit Harbor, Hubbards, and Upper Tantallon. and each of those communities have, what we heard was there were consistencies, and there are definitely some unique characteristics from each of the communities, and so yeah, Lucasville will have its section in that report.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Annika, do you still have a question?
Yeah, any update on the bridge flyover and the interim solution?
Yeah, so there's still work happening on that. I think the interim solution is something we're still working on. There's been some challenges with it, and I suspect we will be bringing back some of those stakeholders that we talked to about a year ago on it with a bit of an update fairly soon. We also owe a report to council on that. So it's a super complicated project. There's lots of work happening on it right now. And there's been a bit of a, we ran up against some challenges with the option that we shared with a lot of you in a separate meeting last year. More to come.
Okay. Nathan Tuck, did you still have a question? Nathan? Is he with us?
Apologies, I just had to reconnect as a panelist.
Oh, okay.
Not sure what happened there. Yeah, sorry, quick question just regarding the Shearwater Woodside connection. When you were thinking to take that to the public and who you'd be sharing that with?
So tentatively February. Just pulling together a few more resources to make that happen, and it would go to the public, and probably we've been to this committee before with this project, but I'm happy to in February or March give the committee a short update on the additional options that we've been working on.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think that's all the questions we have for David, unless
I saw Melena's hand up, or it's down now. I'm not sure if she had it.
Melena's hand is down.
Yeah. Oh,
Okay.
I just had a very quick question. Sorry, Mr. Chair. David, I'm not sure if you can even answer this, but Annika kind of triggered my mind there. I can thank her for this after. I have several friends who do cycle over to Zatzman over the McDonald, and they are constantly complaining about bushes and trees, and they're told to contact the Bridge Commission, who does nothing about it. So they're ending up having to resort to chopping these bushes and trees while getting on to the McDonald. Do you know anything about that and how to resolve this issue?
I think I've heard that before, but I think the only bushes and trees that are growing around there are likely sort of on land that's maintained by the Bridge Commission. But I can talk to colleagues at the Bridge Commission and just find out, what they're hearing, and if I'm sure they have some kind of a program of maintenance, but maybe I suspect maybe it's around sight lines or something like that, and so I can take that and see what I can find out from them.
That would be great, because it's about a half a dozen people, friends and acquaintances of mine, who say, and I can't really tell you, as you know, I'm blind, so what's going on there, but they're saying that the visibility is not good, particularly in the summer months, and the Bridge Commission doesn't respond. So that would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you again, David. We'll move on to item 9.1.3, which is the proposed 2025 meeting schedule. This was provided to you. I'd like someone to move acceptance of that proposed schedule? Any mover?
Milena will move it.
Thank you, Milena. And I need a seconder.
I can second it, you.
Okay. Was that Miles?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so those in favor of the accepting the motion to accept the schedule, please raise your hands or say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay or raise your hand. No one opposed, so that is approved. The motion is approved, and the proposed meeting schedule will be in effect, I assume. So item 9.2.1, Peter Zimmer had requested to make, I guess, a presentation on seasonal maintenance of bike lanes, trails, sidewalks, and crosswalks. So Peter, you have some time to speak on this, but just a heads up, we are getting close. So,
Yes.
all right, away you go.
Okay. I don't really have a presentation. I have a series of questions, and I don't think the active transportation staff are really the ones who are concerned here. My questions have to do with my experience as a cyclist, active transportation, and as a pedestrian and as a bus user, to say these all ages and abilities designations, notions are sweet and very nice, but they're very incomplete. They don't speak to being all seasons. And all seasons needs active maintenance, as we very well know. You know, there are potholes to fill. As a cyclist, I can tell you potholes that are of almost no concern when I'm driving a car are a big concern. Snow, well, it gets plowed into the bike lanes where it sits for 2 or 3 months. You know, there's a whole series of things where I want to know who's in charge, what the policies are. And I think the Active Transportation Committee constituent, the people here, have probably the best, most thoughtful feedback to offer to the, whether it's Department of Public Works, whoever does the maintenance. You know, we should hear from those people, and we should be able to speak to the issues. And so I'm you know, this may be entirely outside of what our legislated mandate is, but I think we're the place, we're the people who should be speaking to that, which goes back to what are our terms of reference. I'd say, to my knowledge, we're the only kind of constituency that has any kind of standing with council, with the city, within the city, to speak about these issues. And it's not just speaking about doing the nice plans and then forwarding them on to the engineers at Department of Public Works, or, you know, either provincially or municipally. But we have to live with the upkeep of those lanes. I've been on Bell Road. Well, now they've pulled the barriers out. So in the winter, we have not even that visual protection, because those bike lanes are going, they are now currently filled with leaves and branches and shit that's been there for months. And they're soon going to be filled with snow. And they are going to be no damn use as a bike lane. And that is an issue that I think really should be concerning everybody who's talking about, well, trying to make active transportation more important. So I don't know what the structure is, whether it's us either individually or as a ad hoc group, writing a letter to the CAO and saying, we have to be able to speak to the engineers who specify it, to the people who maintain it, to the people who go out and do the readjustments for where the locations for the big buttons for the new rectangular flashing crossing lights are, where during the winter months, those big buttons are inaccessible because the people who plow the sidewalks and who plow the crosswalks don't bloody clean the snow. So I have a rant. I don't have a, I'm presenting that. You know, we have to be talking about the pedestrian users, about the transit users, about the bike lane users in all kinds of mobility devices. And we have to be able to talk to the people and hear from the people who actually do the work of keeping them in working order. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Peter. I believe David McIsaac can give you an initial response on this. David?
Yeah, so I just posted in the chat a website that is, kind of describes the framework for clearing roads, sidewalks, bike lanes, protected bike lanes, multi-use pathways, how they're prioritized, what their service standards are, target timelines, that kind of thing. So there was kind of an update to all that stuff a few years ago. Until then, bike lanes and multi-use pathways weren't even included in, some of them, they were clear, but there was no standard for them. There's no sort of threshold. So that's what we have now. I guess, if the committee wants a more detailed presentation on that, on our standards, or sweeping, that kind of thing, I think we did try to get one or two folks here today, but they weren't available. But the more, what I did hear from them quickly is like, the more specific, the better. Like if, the question is, why we do this, or why we experience this, or how often leaves are cleared, or things like that, that's helpful.
Yeah.
So that's, there's machinery purchased, there's people hired, there is and target set for clearing and standards and that kind of thing.
Okay, thank you, David. I'm just wondering, you said you did try to contact some people to speak to the maintenance issues. Maybe before our next meeting, you could confirm that someone will come and speak on these issues. But I also appreciate what you're saying to Peter, which is that, we need pretty specific questions so that these people can answer our questions. So on that, I'll throw it open right now. Briefly, we don't have much time, but if you have a question or you want to speak on this, I see Nathan Tuck, you have your hand up. And let's see, is there anyone else? And Douglas Wetmore. So Nathan, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, Peter, just in response to your comments there. So the mobility response and tactical urbanism team, so I think it was Dylan John, gave a presentation at the Bike Summit just recently. So talked in quite a lot of detail about clearing snow, leaves from the bike lanes and removing and installing the temporary bollards. I'll see if we can get some of that information to you, because it really gave a good idea of how they're managing it. And I know, as Dave just mentioned, they're looking at purchasing new machinery to improve the process, which obviously is quite a complicated process with the limited access. But I know a lot of work is being done in that regard at the moment. So like I said, I'll see if I can just send you some of the information we received for the Bike Summit.
That would be good. And if you say, maybe you can send it to the clerk and she can circulate it to the whole committee. That would probably be the best way. Douglas Wetmore, you had your hand up.
Yeah, just a quick comment from me. I wanted to just add a little note to Peter's comments about debris and leaves in the bike lane. That reminded me that I actually put in a service request to 311 regarding the bike lanes on South Park. I believe the west side, especially had a notable amount of leaves and debris in it. This ticket was submitted on November 14th. I looked it up online and it says that the service request status is now closed. As of this afternoon, there were still quite a lot of leaves in that bike lane, so I think there really is something to say with what the standards are when it comes to cleaning not just leaves from bike lanes, but snow clearing, uh, various like accessibility for our sidewalks, of course. I pulled up the link you shared in chat, David, and I see that there are timelines that say like when clearing would be complete. And maybe I just haven't scrolled down far enough yet, but I don't really see guidelines on what that looks like in terms of the quality of clearing, which I think is a very important note that's been missed. Because I know from previous years, a sidewalk can be cleared, but cleared could mean that it's still got a sheet of ice on it and it's not safe for pretty much anyone with any sort of mobile disability to use. But those are just some comments I wanted to add to the discussion because I think this is an important topic that I believe we've talked about in the past, but would love to see brought up again.
For sure. And we can, maybe get someone like Dylan to come. He'd be the sort of person to potentially talk about that. It's one comment that my maintenance folks don't let me forget about, is that some of the facilities that we plan and build are not easy to maintain. So for example, the South Park, any of our bike lanes where we've kind of got the bike lane at the street level with a precast concrete curb next to it. We basically create a little gully that is great for leaves to kind of get caught up in, branches, if the drainage is not quite right in one spot, snow and stuff like that. We do it here. I hear the same thing from my colleagues across the country. These types of facilities we're putting in because we can get them in faster, we can get them in cheaper. They give pretty much the same level of protection to people bicycling, but they are not easy to maintain. The goal with those kinds of facilities is as those streets are rehabilitated, the bike lane that gets rebuilt will be more permanent and easier to maintain. But you hear the word at these meetings all the time, trade-offs. One of the trade-offs of some of the facilities that we do have is that they are more difficult to maintain.
Okay, thank you, David. I see Glenn Babcock and then Peter Zimmer have hands up. Glenn?
Well, mine's a short comment, but having seen a presentation on snow clearing and service standards before, it's kind of common sense, but when it comes to snow, those service standards only apply if there's less than 15 centimeters of snow. Once you get more than 15 centimeters, where to put the snow becomes a huge problem, and they can't always meet those service standards.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. And Peter?
Okay, I just want to
sorry,
say
David, were you responding to Glenn there?
No, let Peter go, but I did want to make one more point, and I'll answer anything that Peter mentions, but I just did think of one other thing, but Peter should go ahead.
Okay. I mean, in the active transportation thing and my observations, I also want the Halifax Transit here because the bus stops are they're a modal shift point from people who are walking or possibly cycling onto the bus. And I have seen repeatedly zero or terrible maintenance and terrible practices around the bus stops. They are difficult to get onto the buses because there's banks of snow you know, it's a matter of what I'm really concerned about is the basic priority. Some European cities simply say the first snowfall, you get the bike lane clearing machinery out of there, and it's specialized, and they're specialized crews. And then they, you know, they do it repeatedly. I think the surface standards just don't take the IMP priorities seriously. They are written with no attention to that. And I want them to be redrafted. And I think we're the place that discussion has to start. We have to be talking to the bus drivers, the bus operators, the street crews that do it, whether it's city contractors or city staff, to get a priority to say, how can we follow the IMP that the city has signed on to, should be supporting? How can we get the city to the point where it's actually implemented in a way that satisfies people who use the buses, people who use the sidewalks, people who want to cycle or scooter or use a cargo bike on the streets of Halifax as soon as possible? And yes, if there's 15 centimeters of snow come down and lots of wind, it's much harder all the way around. But saying what the priorities are, that's what's got to shift if you want to do a good job.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Glenn, you still have your hand up. You have more to say?
Nope, I'll lower that right away.
Okay, all right. Anyone else on this topic right now? It looks like we will be talking about this in detail if we can get some staff people to make presentations for us, or at least to answer specific questions from us. So I don't see anyone else with a hand. Oh, David. Oh, no. Okay.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that there's going to be some kind of app or some kind of information that people can I should know more about this. Anyway, there's going to be better real-time information available on the status of the bike lanes and the multi-use pathways. So, so the intent is sort of like, you know, maybe there'd be some of those days where it's over 15 centimeters, and, you know, so the messaging will go out that, you know, it's going to be a number of days before they'll get cleared. Or maybe there's going to be ways to kind of, you know, be more specific about some of the facilities, like, you know, if there's, anyway, there's going to be more real-time information sent out or made available to the public this year as a trial on the actual conditions of the bike facilities.
Okay, that's good news. Annika, you have your hand up.
Yeah, just to second what Peter was saying there, I've been thinking a lot about how transit is so integral to AT, particularly to walking. And I think it would be interesting at some point to revisit our mandate to also include transit, because I think AT doesn't exist without transit. And it's certainly, I wonder who speaks for transit and how is it being heard in forums like this. So yeah, just agreeing.
Yeah, and on that point, I believe at a future meeting, Peter has requested that there be a review of our terms of reference. So that's an appropriate time to talk about that transit connection. So I think that's good for now. I don't see anyone with their hand up. Oh, Glenn Babcock.
I did, just because I came into this this particular group as the representative for the accessibility committee, and I was going back and organizing all my meeting notes and my reference materials and everything, and I don't think I have those terms of reference. I don't think I got them when I first joined the committee. So if I could get any reference materials, terms of reference, that sort of thing, that would be quite helpful.
Yeah, and if you didn't get them, I mean, it's possible you missed getting them, but we can ask the clerk's office to send them to you, and that's true. Councillor Young, did you get the terms of reference?
No, I didn't.
Oh, okay. Well, certainly any new members of the committee should be provided with the terms of reference. So Olawumi, please make note of that.
Sure, I will. And also the terms of reference is on the website, but I'll also circulate it to members.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, they are on the website. That's true. Okay, thank you very much. I think that's it for today, and we're just about out of time anyway. There should be probably some new members of the committee joining us as replacements in January. And also at that time, there will be an election for chair and vice chair. And hopefully there'll be some other materials of interest. So thank you very much, everyone. And we will see you all in January. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Take care.
Happy holidays and Merry Christmas.
Yeah. Have a great